UAPs, unidentified anomalous phenomena. Are they extraterrestrial, interdimensional, time travelers in origin, or are they simply a result of top-secret military black projects, false flag alien invasion psyop, drones, or other human-made aircraft? Join UFO historian Don Eckert, MUFON State Director for New York Chris DePerno, retired veteran pilot Commander Cobra, and well-esteemed host and researcher Martin Willis as they discuss the latest news and topics regarding UAPs with a no-holds-barred approach on UAP-Crossfire.
Well, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of UAP-Crossfire. And as usually always, on my right above me, on the screen, our esteemed former Marine and retired police officer and detective, Mr. Christopher DePerno. To
Hello,
Chris's
everybody.
immediate, well, I guess looking at the computer, Martin, it would be to his right. But yeah, one of those is Mr. Martin Willis of the Martin UFO podcast. And right beneath Martin Willis is Commander Cobra. And Commander Cobra, welcome back, my friend. It's great to have you once again in studio.
I missed you guys. I enjoyed watching you online. I had some interesting people looking over my shoulder when I tuned you in, where apparently the internet only provided for about 1 out of every 1,000 cycles. It was like watching a slow scan TV program, but the audio track was going very well. It's great to be back with you. Thank you so much for having me back.
Oh, well, thank you for being here. Well, tonight, last week we figured out that it would be Chris and I would lead this. We didn't really talk about it right before the show, but Chris, buddy, if you want to pop in here with anything, be my guest.
Well, first, I want to just say that in case you go on a rant, I'm prepared. I got some popcorn here, stuff like that.
Well,
so if
hey,
you go on a rant,
it could happen tonight. It's possible.
You never know. You never know. Well, we're going to be talking about the late and great Bruce Maccabee. And there's a lot of person. So
what the hell was that?
Does anyone know what happened?
No, I thought you guys did that.
I had a quick flash from the NSA before that came up, so I don't know what that means.
Oh, wow. Okay. All right.
We're being monitored.
Oh,
Again.
no doubt.
Yeah.
Okay, look, tonight we're
I
going to be
suggest
talking.
It wasn't me, so I'm just
yeah,
saying.
look at that hat and tell me it wasn't you. Okay?
Yeah. Yeah, like we'll believe you.
That hat
Yeah.
and that face is a wanted poster for the NSA right there. Look at that right there.
Yeah.
I don't know, but
So-
I think we ought to send them back across the border.
So tonight we're at least hour number one. It probably could possibly go into hour number two. We're going to be talking about the recent death of Dr. Bruce Maccabee, who was a former Naval Optical Physicist, born May 6th, 1942. He passed on the 10th of this month, 10th of May, 2024. He had just turned 82 years of age. Now, as I told everybody, I sent both Chris, Martin, and Commander Cobra some files that I had. I've known Dr. Bruce Maccabee. I knew Bruce for many years, actually going back to about 1988, 89. And I always found him to be a very low-key guy, very quiet kind of guy. But as time went on, and as my how do I say this in a polite way? As my bullshit detector got more in tune with the field, I began to have some questions about Bruce. Now, the big thing that basically happened with me and my considerations about him, and another fellow figured into this, a fellow by the name of Vincent DiPietro, who was an engineer, and he was, along with Gregory Molinar, Vincent DiPietro, was responsible for the Mars Anomalies D&M Pyramid after the infamous face on Mars was photographed in 1977. He was somebody that really, back in the 80s, took that and tried to take it to the nth degree. There were a number of other people that were involved in that, including Richard Hoagland, who wrote a book on Cydonia, this area on Mars where these structures were, and people like Dr. John Brandenburg became extremely involved in this research. Now, along about 1987, and it was actually before my entree into this field, okay, there was a MUFON symposium in Washington, D.C., and a lot of things began to happen. Now, right around that time, of course, we already heard, and it was public knowledge, about Bentwaters. As a matter of fact, there was a CNN reporter, a guy by the name of Chuck DeCaro, who in 1984 convinced CNN to run a series of reports on the Bentwaters incident, okay? Now, DeCaro was a very interesting guy. As a civilian, he got permission to go through the United States Army Special Warfare Center as a trainee. Got his badges. He was involved in a lot of very hairy, touchy stories and situations. As a matter of fact, several years back, some of you guys may recall this, he and his wife had a break-in into their house. Chuck grabbed his his sturdy piece and employed it on these bad guys that were breaking into his house, and he was shot. Do any of you recall that?
I do.
It was big news at the time.
Yeah.
Okay. So anyway, to get back to Maccabee, Maccabee lived in the Maryland area. Everybody knew Bruce. Linda Moulton House, Stanton Friedman, Bill Moore, big connection there. Jamie Chandra, John Lear, okay. The usual suspects, so to speak. Now, we had found out about the JAL, the Japan Airlines case above Alaska, where that aircraft encountered, by all accounts, and it was basically verified on FAA radar, an unknown object that was described as being approximately the size of an aircraft carrier. Now, this Japanese pilot, and offhand I cannot recall his name, was ferrying a cargo of my favorite French wine, okay, Beaujolais.
Can't remember the pilot, but you can remember the wine.
Yes, I can.
Was Captain Kenju Teriyuchi.
There you go. Okay. So anyway, that was a big thing on in the MUFON thing. And Gulf Breeze began to stir up. The infamous Ed Walters case. And these are all great topics we can follow later. But I was getting my feet wet then, 88, 89, 90, was meeting a lot of these people, met Bruce, wasn't quite sure what the story was about him. But then something happened, and as I put all the pieces together, I went, oh my God. I was contacted by a UFO researcher in Maryland by the name of Donald Rash, and at UFO Magazine, and he called me up to tell me about this unbelievable video that had been downlinked in a public TV station in Maryland directly from the NASA feed. And this feed, okay, which came directly from NASA, showed the space shuttle STS-48 as it was flying above New Zealand and Australia. And looking, they had a camera bolted to the craft. You could look down upon the Earth as they were overflying Australia and New Zealand. And also, as an aside, there's another place in Australia that's of great interest. It's a joint military intelligence base between the Americans, I guess, and the Australians called Pine Gap. Now, we can talk more about Pine Gap down the road.
That would be the Five Eyes, sir.
The who what?
The Five Eyes. That's the all the English-speaking countries have a very special intelligence arrangement, and Pine Gap figures very prominently in that.
Have you ever been there by chance?
No, I've been all around it. It's not an easy place to get to. Very remote and outside of the capital, Canberra.
But as you're looking down from the shuttle, you can see there was a lightning storm below. And suddenly, coming above the limb of the Earth was this object, all right, flying very well. It would have to have been going a minimum, speed-wise, 17.5, 18,000 miles an hour to be in orbit. But it looked very leisurely. This thing is coming up. There were a couple of other oddities in the sky as this thing was flying from. It looked actually like a couple of pillars or posts in space, if you can imagine that. There was something on them that was flapping back and forth, almost like a sail on these two things, whatever they were. And suddenly, there's a brilliant flash of light that basically blanked everything out for about a nanosecond. And suddenly something streaked through the sky toward this object, this UFO. And this object immediately took a violent evasive maneuver, made a 145-degree right angle turn, flew out into space, and then very leisurely circled back around. And this streak flashed right past where basically this thing had been. Now, you can find this video on YouTube if you're not familiar with it, STS-48. But I got to tell you, at that time, now my wife, Vicki, who was the editor-publisher of UFO Magazine, and I had recently done an issue in UFO Magazine devoted toward the Reagan Star Wars initiative. We talked to a lot of people at the Pentagon. My God, we talked to everybody we could get to about the Reagan initiative. And one of the weapons that they were designing, now keep in mind, at least publicly, all of these Star Wars weapons systems were geared toward knocking down ballistic missiles in case somebody, God forbid, ever launched. One of those weapons was something called brilliant pebbles. And it was like like God's very own shotgun. Okay. And the idea was if there was a ballistic missile coming up, they would touch this thing off, and it was like a sky full of ball bearings going at hypervelocity to intersect this missile. Now, that's what I happen to think they used. Somebody used. All right. No doubt in my military mind, this was a military action of some type. Now, with that being said, okay, after it was all said and done, everybody kind of ignored it. Right after that incident, they had a wastewater dump. Now, wastewater involved with was what? It was the urine excretions from the astronauts, and they would dump it into space. All right. It's very important, though, to keep in mind this happened after the incident. Well, I got a phone call from Don Ratch telling me about this. And he said, I'm going to send you out the video. And I said, great, that's cool. And sure enough, he did. He sent it out. I received it in a couple of days. And when I did, I called up a number of people to come over to the house to watch this thing with me. Now, during that afternoon, I got a phone call, totally unexpected, from Dr. Bruce Maccabee. Maccabee said, Don, I'm out here on the West Coast, and I'd like to stop over and see you and Vicky. And I said, well, yeah, sure, Bruce, that'd be great. Let me tell you how to get here. Where you at? He told me he was at supposedly some scientific conference. So I gave him directions. And I said, by the way, I've got something here you might be interested in. And I told him just a little bit about what I was told about this video. I hadn't seen it yet. So he comes out, walks into my living room. I introduced him. Most everybody knew who he was anyway. And he sat down, and for the rest of the night, I swear to God, it was like having the Addams Family butler Lurch there. Never said a freaking word, okay? Now, I popped the videotape into my VCR. I turned it on, and we're watching this thing. And it was like, oh my God, wow, did you see that? And everybody is going on about this.
Except
but not Maccabee. Now, shortly after that, I got a call from Don Ratch. And he said, I've got some more information about this. And I said, oh, great. What? He said, Vince DiPietro is a friend of mine. And he worked over, I believe it was at, what was there was a NASA facility there. He was a contractor.
Jet propulsion?
No. This is in Maryland, D.C. area.
Not Stennis, that's Mississippi. Give me a second, it'll come to me.
Yeah, well, anyway. So he said, Don, DiPietro saw that, freaked out, because he was involved with things like the Fund for UFO Research.
John, that would be Goddard. Excuse me.
Goddard, thank you. Goddard. Thank you. Yes, he was at Goddard. And he was involved with the Fund for UFO Research. And at the time, Bruce Maccabee was the chairman. Okay. Now, Maccabee came in. They had a private meeting with a bunch of guys, all NASA affiliated, connected. They all watched this. It blew their minds, okay? Blew their minds. And DiPietro and Maccabee started talking about this. And you know what conclusion they came up with? There's a war going on in outer space. So Maccabee contacted some people he knew. They got a meeting with the chairman of the scientific committee for Congress, and he and DiPietro went to Jersey to meet this guy, okay, and tell him their fears. Then everything with that went black. Suddenly, DiPietro started getting freaked out. He was afraid he stepped in something big. And Cobra, you listened to the show that I sent you with DiPietro,
Correct.
right? You heard DiPietro talking about that. If he got murdered, get this tape to the nearest TV station.
That it seems contrite when you bring this kind of aspect up. It just happened recently in some of the whistleblower activity that's going on in our current news, where people now have for a long time said, look, they're telling you, I may be paranoid, I may be not sure what's going around me, but I'm not suicidal. If something happens to me, you need to make sure this information goes forward. There is a quality in that show that you sent me that made my hair stand up, because it sounds to me a person that is really feeling like they're in the corner and don't have a lot of ways to handle it.
Well, Vince died in a nursing facility. He was very good friends with Brandenburg, by the way.
Right.
Maccabee now is no longer with us. So anyway, putting all these parts and pieces together. And during that show, I mentioned the STS-48 thing. He didn't want to really, Maccabee did not really want to engage with that, did he? He deflected and went off to the side, okay, talked around it. This was something, well, I don't know that much about it. Well, he pulled that with me again a couple of years ago. Now, I'm going to get to a point here, and I'm sure everybody's going to be happy when I do. But I questioned him about that recently, okay, on Dark Matters Radio. And Skywatcher, Bill Skywatcher, was the producer that night. And I asked him about this classic Intel bullshit. Well, Don, I don't remember that. Convenient memory, okay? My point is, the guy was an Intel weenie from the get-go. I believe that. I'm firmly committed to that idea. And he met for a number of years with the CIA on a weekly basis. He would go over and have lunch and chats with people he knew. People like Ron Pandolfi, Russell Targ, and others. Okay? All the usual suspects. As I found this out, I became convinced this guy was playing both sides against the middle. And
Don?
The bottom line was, yes.
No, finish your thought. Come to me when you finish your thought.
The bottom line was basically this guy had been feeding information back to the Intel weenies his entire foray into the UFO research field. Now, one more thing to keep in mind. I knew other guys, for example, Don Berliner, who worked as a civilian for the Army. And when his UFO interest came to the forefront, he got slapped back down and told you can't bring that bullshit into this, into this facility. Bruce Maccabee, on the other hand, worked for the Navy, was an optical physicist, worked with, among other things, Reagan's Star Wars initiative, lasers and what have you, was one of the most public government employees anywhere, talking about the UFO conundrum, and not a thing ever impacted him. Now, I don't know about you guys, but that told me everything I needed to know. Go ahead.
So that's a bit of a flag. So I'm gonna work this backwards before my other greatly esteemed and much more knowledgeable co-hosts roll in on this. But let me run a couple questions back to you. What would you term your relationship with Maccabee as? And before you answer, to the Maccabee family and to his friends, as I always say, God's peace surpasses all knowledge and understanding. A storied life, no doubt, however you look at it. And I would expect, a loved one to a number of people in that, and I respect that. But you seem to have a very interesting relationship with Maccabee, that he would seek you out. Obviously, my spider sense goes way up when someone calls you when you just happen to have a tape that you're going to show, and you just happen to have some people over, and he happens to be in the area at some unknown conference. I mean, coincidence. There are no coincidences. There are conspiracies. But how would you term, because it seems that your relationship with him changed. I don't think it's a very friend-based friendship, a kind of a professional relationship, that you both kind of were in contact with each other for information to exchange stuff. Can you throw it together for the audience what the more personal aspect between Decker and Maccabee was?
There was no personal relationship.
Just professional.
Strictly professional.
And to define the professional, it seems to be then that it may be a little bit more. We ran
articles and stuff like that from Maccabee if he submitted them to the magazine. Hey, look, at that time, UFO magazine was ground central for the UFO movement in the United States. And I mean, everybody that was associated, affiliated, or interested in this field, knew about UFO magazine. They knew my wife, Vicky. They knew me. They knew Renee. When Renee was working as an associate editor for 5 or 6 years, UFO magazine was the place to go before it was torpedoed. But yes.
So obviously, with that kind of position in that media space at the time, predating the world that we live in now with internet and the new media that is not so new anymore, it's pretty much the standard. It wouldn't surprise me that someone like Maccabee, especially if he had the kind of coloring that we think that he did, and he shows definite signs of being someone that was connected. It doesn't surprise you that he's reaching out to you, that he's looking for access for articles, that he's looking for some kind of a billboard to put some of his material out, correct?
Sure. But look, and this is something else, and I don't often say this because over the years, especially when we were doing UFO magazine, we would have people I didn't have a clue who they were, drop into the offices and tell Vicky and I about how their house is constantly being overflown by black helicopters. They're being, shadowed, observed, whatever. They're an abductee, the men in black. I mean, I heard all that crap practically 24/7. Well, I knew it. I had enough professional in me to recognize it when I saw it. We were often being surveilled. And I told you about the time that Richard Saraday was coming out. We were working on some projects, and he came into the room, and he said, "Hey, by the way," he said, "you got a couple of friends down there." And I said, "In the van?" It was a light-colored van down there, 2 guys. He said, "Yeah." I said, "Huh, okay. I wonder if they'd like a cup of coffee." So I told you guys this before. I got my coffee pot and a couple of cups, and I walked out the door and started walking toward the van, and they fired it up and took off. But we were being surveilled. And right after I went on Larry King. Now, this was, I had done about 5 or 6 appearances on Larry King Live, different stories. And I knew the producer. It was a guy by the name of Tom Farmer. And when I got this video, okay, I called him up and I said, "Buddy, I've got something here that's a barn burner."
And it's the UFO videotape that has America.
Was that the
Audio.
NSA or was that the...
That was your video, but I didn't know it had audio to it. I was going to play it. Sorry.
Yeah.
All right.
So no, that's fine. So anyway, he had me run down to CNN in LA, beam this thing back, took a look at it, said, "Oh yeah." He said, "Larry want to do this story." And he said, "But he said, we got to have a skeptic in there, Don. So who do you recommend?" And I said, "Well, the perennial is Phil Klass." Well, they called Klass. He didn't want anything to do with it. Why? I don't know.
Why?
I don't know.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So I suggested Jim Oberg, okay, from NASA. Now, this is a little known fact among many people, but Oberg, in his military service, had been an Air Force nuclear officer. Now, you don't get to be an Air Force nuclear officer and not have at least a TS&C clearance, top secret crypto. Okay. Hell, it might have been higher with nuclear weapons. Who knows? But a lot of people were not aware of that. So I go in, we do the show, and on the show, the first question out of my mouth, because he is representing NASA, I ask Oberg this simple question: "Jim, is there anything about this NASA video or anything that is under a security restriction, things that you would not be permitted to talk about?" Which I thought was a perfectly innocuous question, right? He blew up and started yelling, and he accused me of coming on the show to sell magazines. Well, duh. Hell yes, I came on the show. And that's certainly one of the reasons I came on the show. Want to get our magazine out there. But that's not what I asked, okay? And then it got contentious. The rest of the show was contentious. Now, King always took phone calls, okay, toward the end of the show. He only took 2 that night. 2 telephone calls. And guess what, guys? They were both from NASA employees. Duh. Was the fix in? One was a guy down in Alabama by the name of O.H. Bond. The other guy, lo and behold, my old buddy, Vincent D. Pietro. He got through. Can you freaking believe that? And he immediately started trying to say, well, we think it's how you know, at first I was kind of taken in by this, but the guy was truly terrified that somebody was going to whack him. Okay. I am convinced of that. And Ratch told me the same thing. But I got to say, that kind of pissed me off. I could see as clear as I'm sitting here now what he was trying to do. So I said, Vince, let me ask you a question. After this happened, did you see the UFO? Did you see the ball that flew past the shuttle? Did you see that? And there was more to the video than you're seeing. And he said, yeah, I saw that. Oh, okay. Well, let me ask you, Vince, did that look like ice to you, or did that look like something else? I don't know what it was. Thank you, Vince. Okay. So, look, this thing, I was convinced this would be the smoking gun at the time. Boy, talk about naive. I was convinced this would be the smoking gun that would cause the American news media to sit up and take notice. It didn't. But one more thing, guys. About 2 days later, maybe 3, we get a call at the magazine. And it's one of our correspondents, and this guy was a real honest-to-God correspondent, worked in defense intelligence publications. He was probably a spook spying on us too. But he said, Don, he said, let me ask you, what's shaken out since you were on Larry King Live? And I said, well, to tell you the truth, not a damn thing. He said, nothing, huh? I said, we haven't heard from anybody. He said, well, I can tell you this. He said, you, my friend, pissed off a bunch of people at the Pentagon.
Now, to your 3 co-hosts, that Don Ecker and the word pissing off people is really a surprise.
Yeah. But this is a family show. I'm not sure if we can say the word bullshit either.
Yeah, well, you know, I took a chance, Mark.
Okay.
Don, let me ask you this.
Bovine excrement for the PG crowd, Mark.
Yes. Bull excrement.
Don, let me ask you this. If Bruce Maccabee, and I'm not disputing that Bruce Maccabee probably spied on a lot of people, probably was an intelligence agent, but on the same point, he was actually authenticating things in the UFO community. He wasn't really a debunker.
Yeah, that's a great point, Chris.
Right,
He did a lot for me, too. Yeah.
He did authenticate the Trent UFO photos. He found the negatives and he authenticated that. That was a big deal. You know,
that was also a very, very old case.
Right. And so he did that. And I know personally, I sent him some photos and he authenticated those for me. Now, he also went on shows and did podcast, well, not podcasts, but radio shows and different television stuff. And he really promoted the ufology field and really, you know, kind of, you know, slanted the U.S. government for something. I like to play this one Bruce Maccabee tape where he does say this type of stuff. And I want to get your opinion, Don, because I think it's important that we look at what he was doing and then analyze this because, you know, he may very well have been an intelligence agent. I for one, think he was, but he was working both sides of the fence. Hold on. Let me play this one video.
Well, having studied the historical record as well as doing sighting investigations and so on, it becomes clear to me that the government took a 2-track approach. One was that the really good information was somehow bottled up, and the information that was released to the public was always with the intent of indicating that everything could be explained. And if you look through the Project Blue Book files, for example, you can find a number of sightings where the explanations don't make any sense in the context of the sighting. I don't think it's because the people who were doing the Project Blue Book investigations were stupid, but rather they had an agenda, which was to play this whole thing down as much as possible. So where the rubber meets the road in ufology is the answer to this question. Are there any sightings that can't be explained by conventional phenomena? If there were no such sightings, I wouldn't be here. And I'm sure most of the other people wouldn't be here either. It's when you find that there are some sightings which can't be explained by ordinary phenomena, except by assuming, for example, witnesses or test instruments or devices suddenly went crazy during the period of the sighting and then reverted to normalcy afterwards.
So I want to start with you, Don, and ask you, now that you saw that video, he's kind of like playing both sides of the fence, don't you think?
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah, that was something that I often wrestled with, Chris, in regards to Maccabee. But remember who the CIA people that he met with were.
Sure.
Pandolfi, Targ, Kit Green. Okay.
Yeah, but wasn't Tar doing more remote viewing than ufology at one point? I mean, he was working with Hal Puthoff on remote viewing with Project Stargate. So
Yeah.
I'm not in stuff. So how much?
But UFOs figured into that too, Chris.
Yeah,
a lot of those remote viewers were encountering that frequently.
Yeah, Uri Geller and some of the others and stuff. Let me go to Martin. I want to ask Martin. Martin, you saw that video, and you also had suspicions of what Bruce Maccabee was doing. But he was, I mean, my opinion, he was playing both sides of the fence to make himself look good in the community. What do you say?
Well, you know, he was always very nice to me. I will say that. I did talk to an old-time researcher that claimed that there was some things that Maccabee was doing that was very suspicious. And this had to do with a research site years ago. And I do have a clip also, but I'd like to play it at some point where I actually ask him.
Why don't you play it right now?
Okay, I will. I just, there was also a situation with, you mentioned Gulf Breeze, the Gulf Breeze. Now he received I believe a $10,000 check when he wrote the forward to that. That was pretty interesting too. A real a curious situation at that time. And I did confront him about that too on this interview. This is an old interview. Audio's not that great, but it was on the phone. Here it is.
Were you removed as chairman of FUFOR, Fund for UFO Research, or did you leave when someone was accusing you of being a mole in the UFO field for the CIA?
It turned out that I moved away from the area, and it was very difficult for me to travel after I moved into the hills of Maryland. It was difficult for me to travel to meetings. And so basically after being the director of FUFOR for about 13 years, I resigned the directorship. I'm still a member of the National Committee, of course. But one guy, I can't think of his last name, Todd Zekel, was angry that the fund didn't support his research, and he decided to, for some reason, he decided to get back at me and the fund by claiming that I was a CIA mole, essentially spying on the UFO field on behalf of the CIA, which was not true. I did have CIA connections, and this is written in the book. Turned out that having these CIA connections turned out to be quite advantageous as far as getting information on sightings and stuff was concerned.
Mm-hmm.
But
okay, let me just say this before you continue, Martin. Bullshit. Okay? Bullshit. Dick Hall, Richard Hall, okay, forced him to resign.
Okay.
Why is that? Why is that, Don?
Do you know who Dick Hall was?
Yeah.
Chris?
No.
Okay. Dick Hall was back all the way in the NICAP days with Donald Kehoe. All right. He was part of NICAP. And he was a well-known, well-respected researcher. You think I'm a curmudgeon? Oh my God, Dick Hall put me to shame. All right. I incurred his wrath a couple of times, and it was quite funny in hindsight. It wasn't funny at the time. But anyway, Hall was part of FUFOR, was one of the leading lights of FUFOR. And when this came out from Todd Zeckel, all right, now Zeckel is definitely, he was an acquired taste, but Todd Zeckel pointed out that Maccabee was having weekly luncheons, meetings over at CIA, weekly, and the Fund for UFO Research, when they found that out, they said, "Oh my God, he's compromising all of us," and they forced him to resign.
Interesting.
Martin, I want you had something to say.
No, I just ran the clip, and you know, I mean, it's and you know, I think I did 3 shows with him over the years, but you know, he was always a very nice guy, and I do believe, you know, when you're saying he's playing two sides, you know, he really did have an interest in this, and oftentimes he would look, you know, someone would send me something, I'd pass it along to him, and within a day or two, I'd hear back from him, and he'd have, usually, you know, he'd explain what it was, or he would say it's very interesting. One thing he said to me in one of the interviews, he said the videos and the photos really don't mean anything if you don't have a solid witness. And I think that's actually a good statement myself.
Yeah,
you know,
Commander,
I gotta say, I'm on the outside of this with Dr. Mack. Never had a chance to interview him. I know him basically through what I know from what I've read and through the 3 of you. The fact that someone is having public lunches with the CIA is a huge red flag to me in the world that I am. Okay. I've worked with different agency people over the years, and we never met in any kind of forum that it showed up on a calendar or we could talk about it. We had to sign statements that we were dealing with it. So if you're having annotated recorded meetings, like you go to visit at Langley, you're going to take a tour, you're there for something, that's a different kind of set there. So did they have someone that was a useful active kind of role player for them? That's kind of what I leave at the end of the day. I think he's earnest in his interest. I think he may have believed things that he was being told, or if he was being told things or shown things. And then he had a very important role with this. Plus, he was a member of the DoD complex. He was inside that citadel. So it doesn't surprise me that, you think there's a very active part. The Cold War was still happening during this period. Star Wars under the Reagan administration was absolutely positively driving the final nails in the coffin of the Soviet Union. I mean, that technology and what happened during Desert Storm was the 1-2 punch that completely caused that collapse. That's connected to all of this. So I think it's an interesting duality that you guys are touching upon, where it seems that he is being dispatched to do things, as well as someone who has an earnest and some level of access to verify things that were brought to him. It's an incredibly intriguing situation. And
see, the first thing comes to mind, Cobra, when we talk about intelligence officer, the first name is Richard Doty, because everybody says, "Oh, Richard Doty, he was OSI, he was the Man in Black," and he will. I mean, we even had it on a show where he was part in collusion with a guy, maybe had him have a nervous breakdown, right, Don?
Benowitz.
Yeah. Paul Benowitz.
Yeah. So, I mean, now you have that type of intelligence officer. But I see something different with Maccabee because Maccabee is actually criticizing the U.S. government, saying, "Hey, Blue Book was kind of a sham, and we really got stuff here." And he goes on to say that the stuff is authenticated, which if the he's kind of doing the reverse of some specs that we see that the government doesn't want this out. But here's this naval physicist who's got a top secret clearance, like you said, Commander, and he is defying, more or less defying what the government's, schedule is on this. What do you say to that?
Are you directing it back to me?
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. That seems like an operative. But you two have been in law enforcement. What's the relationship with CIs? CIs are out doing things, right? And they come to you for confession and absolution for their naughty activities, right?
Well, I got something to say about
providing information, but there's also a part where they get to play the other part of it. And I think that he earnestly believed that he was doing some good on the way he was approaching this. And on top of that, being an incredibly well-schooled academic. And I don't mean that as a liability. I just think it's a certain kind of coding or condition on him that he was, very highly trained in the academic world. And he was recruited most likely out of that world, obviously for the work that he did on the more open side of it. So it doesn't surprise me that there's a lot of mystique or even kind of question about what goes on here. I just think that, like Martin had brought out earlier, I think there's some verifiable benefit, good works that he did do.
Yeah, I'd like to just say something about the CIA because that, just comes up a lot. I mean, I think of the CIA as like foreign, looking at foreign intelligence, more on other soil than in the U.S. soil, like the FBI.
That's how they're legally chartered. But times of late, that's proven not to be quite the truth on some of the activities been involved in. But that's how they're chartered. That's correct.
I got a name for you guys to look up later. Okay, this was a guy I knew. His name was Ralph McGehee. He designed a computer program. He was retired from years and years and years from the CIA. He was recruited out of Notre Dame. Okay. He traveled all over the world, spent extensive time in Southeast Asia, and became one of the fiercest critics of the CIA that they had since Marchetti. Okay. Now, this guy did this database. Check it out. CIA base, all one word. And this was back in the days of Microsoft DOS. Okay. There's no longer a computer program available. There he is, Ralph McGehee. And he was a very interesting guy. But one thing he told me, and he was so angry about, was the illegal activities they conducted here in CONUS, the continental United States, which by their charter, they are not permitted to do, but they do it anyway. And nobody holds them to account. So,
yeah. Now, wait a minute, Mark.
Before I forget, one more thing, just one more thing. Talking about STS-48 and the call that we got from our contact back in Washington that told me I had pissed off a lot of people at the Pentagon. The bottom line was that day they canceled the live feed from the space shuttle. And from that time forward, anything you see from outer space has been vetted or in time delay. You no longer see anything live from outer space, and you can blame me for that.
Or when you have fun, the astronaut's hand just gloved in their spacesuit will cover the camera. as happened a couple of years back. It's just really bad production values. That just happens. There's nothing to see here. There's, and quite honestly, if you're a group of guys and gals like us and everybody around it, that's the kind of, red meat or bait that we're going to go after. Why would an astronaut, when you have a camera out there and something coming up and their gloved hand just happens to obscure the lens for 30 seconds to 2 minutes? Now, obviously, when you do that, we become, the absolute, we're venomous. We're out of control. There's the cover up. There's all of it. Now, I think, Don, I think you're right. We're headed to break. I realize that. So, but you are the silverback of the time delay from NASA.
Martin, before we go to break, was there something you wanted to say?
No, I'm just trying to picture a silverback. Isn't that like a
think of 2001?
It's a
boar.
Think
of 2001, Martin. Think of 2001.
Yeah.
Don naked with a bone in his hand.
I just got a headache.
Looking up into the sky.
I think I have a dentist appointment I'm late for.
And he sees the space shuttle going by. That's the image that you need to have. That will put you to sleep tonight.
I think we're going to go to break, hopefully, like now.
Yeah, I got to get an aspirin.
Yeah, Tylenol.
And we are back with my esteemed co-hosts, Chris DiPerno, Martin Willis, Commander Cobra. And I think up to this point, gentlemen, I think this has been an extraordinarily informing show.
I need to make a public service announcement.
Absolutely.
In the private chat, some of the co-hosts have been self-medicating due to the first hour of the show.
I can't get the image. Yeah, I mean, yeah, okay.
And I am now into American rye whiskey for the last part of the show, folks. I couldn't wait. Oh, there you go. There's Don.
Oh, wow. That's Don? Picture?
Yeah, football practice. That's football practice in Pennsylvania right there.
Wow. Talk about digressing. Yes.
Yeah, back in the day.
The evolution, it all works. You just gotta.
Don, I thought you were.
I don't see much of a change, actually. Really,
Well, he's obviously getting his football pretty up for the show.
Shaved. That's all.
A little shaven.
Right. I showered this morning, gentlemen. I shaved. I did all that stuff, knowing that I would be here tonight. I wore my favorite T-shirt. I mean, hey.
I thought those were scrubs. You're not wearing scrubs? No.
I'd like to add that we have a great audience that is chatting in the comments. Fantastic stuff coming in the comments. And it's just great. I've been away from you guys for a couple of weeks. I couldn't see comments where I was at when I was gone for the last couple of weeks.
Thank God.
I could just get the feed. Great.
What are they saying?
Well, they're saying, Don, that you have a very powerful and charismatic kind of presence. Most of the women and many of the men seem to be in love with Martin. Chris has that teddy bear kind of affection, and no one knows why I'm on the show. No one
teddy bear, okay.
Part of the show.
I'll bring my teddy bear next time I come on the show.
Just wear pajamas. If you want to get the kind of action that Martin's getting in the comments, just wear pajamas. That's all you have to do.
How about shorts? I got gym shorts on.
Let's not push it too quick. I think a night of you in shorts and pictures of Don full deflagro, that may be more than we could do.
You might have to be calling your therapist.
Yeah, that's right.
For that one. So
there we go.
So I want to ask Don a question. I want to start with this because I was reading that when Kenneth Arnold had his sighting back in 1947, the FBI was investigating that because they thought it possibly could have been Russian and everything. But apparently, somehow or another, was Bruce Maccabee involved with Kenneth Arnold's sighting at any stage?
I do not know. Of course, Maccabee at that time, in 1947,
he would have been 5 years old.
5 years old. Yeah.
Okay. There you go. So he wasn't involved with that. The only reason I'm saying that is because a lot of intelligence agencies were really homing in on Kenneth Arnold's sighting. You know, the CIA was involved, the FBI was involved, and they are all taking a look and trying to dissect this thing if it was actually something that, you know, Russia at the time was more advanced with. Okay.
All right.
And what year was that, Chris?
That was in 1940s. What's that?
40 what?
Kenneth
47, June of 47.
Yeah.
Kenneth Arnold had his sighting over near Mount Rainier on the 24th of June.
Right.
1947.
And they were very odd shaped. They were not saucer shaped.
Right.
However, when he said the phrase, they were skipping across, like rocks skipping across the stream.
Right.
It was a journalist that actually changed that to flying like
saucers
a flying
or
saucer.
plates. Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just wanted to throw in there that the CIA wasn't officially created until a couple months later. So,
well, if you gentlemen will recall, in my disclosure paper, I pointed out 3 things that happened in the immediate aftermath of whatever event happened at Roswell. Okay, within weeks. All right, the National Security Act was signed into law. The Central Intelligence Agency was formed from the old World War II OSS, Wild Bill Donovan, and the United States Air Force came into existence when they broke away from the United States Army. So, 3 things there that happened piggyback, 1, 2, 3, in the event of the Roswell crash. Now, I don't know what it's going to take for people to put these freaking dots together, all right, that something momentous happened there. Momentous. And to this day, the effects are still reverberating throughout the whole damn planet. And I think, in part, it's because of that, from what we can tell at this point, low intensity warfare going on out there, and what might actually be our genesis of the human race, Homo sapiens sapiens. This is, and that's a paper I'm starting to do some preliminary research on right now. So yeah, there's some wild stuff out there, but most people don't have the intelligence or the patience to sit down, to claim they're interested in this, and to take an in-depth, very deep dive on it. Because to do so will take you right down that rabbit hole, and that rabbit hole can be a scary place.
A lot of people don't have the time, or like you said, a deep enough interest but there's a lot of people, just coming in, because of what happened with the New York Times, or, when that article came out, and they say, well, maybe there is something to this. So they have to pay their mortgage. They have to do their job. They're invested in their work, whatever it is. So I understand that a lot of people don't have the time, and some of them rely on shows like this.
But Martin, we're also victims of this media. If you can't deliver it in 2 minutes, people are starting to drop off. They're looking at the next thing. I saw a quick comment. I'm sorry that I forgot the name. They brought up Aztec. Aztec UFO incident occurred in 1948. It's after the pivotal events that went around at Roswell, and it really started to get reported in 1949. So I saw that in there. That's one of my favorite incidents to look at, is Aztec, because it's been so well researched by some people out there in the field. So I just wanted to throw that in.
Well,
I think we're victims of our cycle of news, our cycle of media, and our cycle of time.
Well, there's controversy about. Oh, I don't know how that came up. There's controversy about the Aztec.
Oh, absolutely.
Even though Jacques Vallée, went in, there's still a lot of controversy whether that actually really happened or not. So I don't know about that one myself. I'm on the
Well,
fence. On the fence.
earlier, I believe one of you guys, it might have been Chris or Martin, it might have been you, that mentioned Paul Benowitz. Okay, earlier.
Yeah,
in
it was
the
Chris
show.
and I. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And something that I discovered or found out in his very last public appearance, which was on my radio program, UFOs Tonight. This is like June 94. Bill Moore, William Moore, the guy that did the first book on the Roswell event,
Yep. Mm-hmm.
told me, and he knew all the players. Now, by this time, he had been thoroughly discredited in many quarters of UFO research because of his admission about his part in the Paul Benowitz affair. But he told me on the radio, and I challenged him, and he promised to furnish the documentation, never did. The son of a bitch disappeared. Okay. But he told me that Jacques Vallée and J. Allen Hynek were both, in effect, still working with the United States Air Force. And I challenged him. I said, no, wait a minute, Bill, wait a minute. Can you prove that? Yes, I have the documents back at my house. I said, well, you didn't bring them with you. No, I want to see them. And he said, I can make that happen next week. Well, he never did. Okay. And the guy has been, he's been out of the building with Elvis ever since.
Yeah, but Don, don't you think they play both sides of the fence sometime? I mean, they've got great government jobs, and they're probably still hired as contractors. So I mean,
let's not be besmirching the contractor. You got one in the room here, Chrissy. Come on.
No,
now.
I'm not smirching it. I'm just saying that as you know, Commander, there's certain things you just can't talk about, right?
Absolutely. And I also hear that if you're a government civilian with access and programs, you could actively be part of a program or allowed. I mean, let's go back to the whistleblowers that we talked about earlier this year on the show. Active duty people that have some association still with the government. Their credentials with the government provide them a certain amount of weight when they speak, right? We have sliced and diced through a number of them. We have determined that we think that some of them have credible witness testimony, and we have been very analytical and very fairly analyze what they have said. Things that don't make sense, cases that they claim that have been kind of debunked or historically have been reviewed as probably not accurate. They talk about those. And then we've had other folks that are directors and very high-level folks that have crapped all over these people that are whistleblowers, and we've said we think that these people are pretty suspect. But that credential that they brought, that they're connected with the government, as much as we think or we tend to profess, I think, in general, I think it's very fair to say, I don't want to speak for my other three co-hosts, that the government may have different facets, different entities, different projections of what they want to pass off is real versus non-real, what the message is, what they don't want revealed. I don't think that happened in the last 10 years. I think that's been going on since the 30s.
Yeah, I like to comment on that, but first, Martin, you had a thought, and I want you to get that out.
Oh, I was just saying, Bill Moore is still around because last time I talked to Greg Bishop, he says he's still, he's still really good friends with Bill Moore at this point. Greg Bishop, out in California. You must know him, Don.
Do I know him? Oh, I know.
Oh, I don't know what I just opened up there, but anyway,
I'm not sure what box you just got yourself in, Martin.
But I just saw something fly by over my screen with wings and like long tentacle hands when he laughed like that. I don't know what that means.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure an angel in heaven's getting ready to break a seal, but we'll let that go. Let's try to hold that seal together.
I'm trying to figure out, is that wings behind Don or is that a chair? I can't really, like bat wings. No. Oh, yeah.
That's a chair. That's a chair.
It's a chair.
Yeah. And that's a tiger. You see that?
I see that. Looks Asian.
It is. My Okinawan girlfriend, way back in the day.
Is the wife in the room?
Yeah. Oh, she knows all about her. Yeah. Made that for me in the day, okay, for my birthday, all right. I was born in the year of the tiger, and that was her way of saying, I love you so much.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We should do a show one night talking about our Asian zodiac. That would be a very interesting show. It would reveal a lot. It would reveal a lot.
I'll appraise that for you sometime, Don. If you need it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask all of you, could Bruce Maccabee be getting his? Well, let's look at David Grush. I firmly believe, and I think some of you will agree, that David Grush, although a loyal patriot, a good guy, was giving tasking orders what to say and what not to say. He kind of even admits it on Joe Rogan's show. He says, I have to be briefed on what I can say and what I cannot say prior to going on. And he's absolutely refused to talk about Roswell, which struck me kind of funny because everybody in the world is talking about Roswell, but he's not allowed. Could Bruce Maccabee be the same thing? Could he be given tasking orders to say certain things the way they want to pull the narrative? Martin, I'll start with you.
Well, I think unless I misunderstood, I think what Grush might be talking about is anytime, they're going to release something, basically in print or an interview or anything like that, that they have to run it by to make sure that they can talk about these things without any problems. Isn't that what he was talking about?
Correct, but they also tell him you can't talk about that. And one particular thing that he mentioned was Roswell, because they asked about Roswell.
The fact that he would make a case about that is very interesting.
It is, because we know the government's lied. I think what did Stan Friedman used to say 6 times when it comes to Roswell? It's very, very verifiable. Facts that they lied 6 times, including the crash test dummies, the mogul, and et cetera, the first cover up and all that. And, since we're somehow landed on Roswell, pun intended, what do you guys think about, this is one thing I've always brought up to skeptics in Roswell. Why on earth would the Army Air Force at the time actually let a headline be released that they caught a crashed saucer?
They had a more important thing they were covering up.
And what would that be? You think that's the mogul?
So there's 2 parts to me on Roswell. I'm not one that really has been bought. Like, you guys doubt Aztec, and I tend to think Aztec has some very, thanks to the Ramseys and the work that they've done over the years, and my deep talks with them. Roswell, with the absolute mania that was going on because of the atomic transitioning into nuclear weapons era that we were living in, the use of balloons for the reconnaissance work that was being done over the vastness of the Soviet Union, not revealing that and having some kind of a cover. The other part about Roswell is the activity that went on, UFO activity, not part of the crash, not part of what went on with that. On the other facilities around Roswell is much more intriguing and gets hardly any playtime whatsoever, because everything has been focused on something that was brought back up in the 70s. Post Blue Book, post a understanding of the folks that look at these kinds of things, what's the public interested in? The infiltration of UFO conventions, UFO gatherings where they had purportedly Air Force, but we'll just say government people that were involved, that were finding out people that were leaders within these different groups, providing them information, working them up, sending stuff in, And it was used as partially as a cover for what they were doing in other activities. That's a known fact. So when you start mixing and mashing known deception operations as well as unexplained phenomena, folks that we're talking to like tonight, Dr. Maccabee, Major or Lieutenant Colonel Grouch, I've never been able to figure out what his final rank was. I think that there are parts where they are earnest in what they're doing, and I think there's parts where they're being played for the public. And now we live in an era where the new media that we are almost totally as a planet engaged in to keep some kind of a mass of control, or at least keep the dialogue going in a direction they want. Various parts of the government, world governments, use this as a means to go forward to provide information. And as I've said to you guys many, many times on the show and previous shows that I've been on, the ability to go through and crowdsource what's happening is the hottest part of what Intel does these days. We provide the intelligence agencies of every flavor and color almost unlimited information and access. We scream and yell that someone may call us up on the phone or send an email wanting information, but we'll go on Facebook and we'll talk about the most intimate details of our life and put it up there for the world. And you don't need people with security clearances. You just need people that are willing to sit at computer screens and run algorithms and collect data on all this information. And you have a very happy tech part of our society that's willing to sell that information. And there's people that buy that information in mass quantity that's going on. That's where we're at.
And ergo, that's why in January of 95, the Disney World kowtowed to whoever in the intelligence business to bring all those top UFO researchers down to Orlando for a conference and never paid 1 cent to promote it.
Right.
And we gave a conference to an empty room except for a few people. Guess who those people were?
Oh, intelligence operatives, probably, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I didn't see it at the time, which really, I got to say, I was pissed at myself. Really pissed for not seeing it.
At 95, we were not, I mean, you have to look at the logarithmic, the geometric progression of where we are. I just had this talk recently with a group of people, where we are with how we interact. And COVID and the pandemic probably accelerated it to levels unimaginable. 95, if you were getting email and you were doing that on the dial-in for AOL, and you got that AOL again? Message finally that said, AOL, you have mail, right? Woo!
Yeah.
You were, I am somebody. I have email account. In fact, I got a buddy who still has an AOL account. He still uses the AOL account. I thought I was going to be the last guy on the planet with an AOL account. I finally had to just let it go. Look where we are now. You guys contact me when I'm on the road and we're communicating, and I am in an airplane 10,000 feet over Tampa watching the soft week activities going down, and I'm able to send you guys an email and picture of what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Which hopefully Bill shows you. That didn't happen in a linear progression. That has happened in a compressed progression of sometimes days, weeks to months to where we were in years. In 95, I think the indications to a lot of intelligence folks were, we don't know where this is going. But getting a gathering like this at Disney World, I mean, what could be more wholesome than Disney World, right? Disney World, Goofy, Saturn, here comes Uranus. It's all there, right?
Well, think of where AI is taking everything. I mean, talk about a jump.
Absolutely. I mean, I kiss you on both cheeks. You can't even calculate where that's going. And the part I love best is people think AI is some kind of divine intervention, some kind of divine thing. It is a man-made, human-created. That means it has flaws in it. I just watched a video before I came on this show that you would absolutely, unequivocally believe the person that was speaking was real. It was not real. What this person was saying was not real, but they're in the public sphere.
Yeah.
Totally.
Guys, I just got one thing to say. Go get a copy of the film The Terminator.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I got to tell you, AI scares the death out of me because I think we haven't involved ourselves to where we're trying to weaponize it. And we haven't involved ourselves yet that we're going to use it safely.
You're right.
And correctly and intelligently.
Well, Chris, I take it one.
I agree.
Martin, you're right. You're right. But I take it one level beyond that. We're trying to create something divine. We want something to tell us what to do. We want something to guide us in where it's going to go. We've rejected we've rejected old cultural kind of ways of approaching that. You know, folks like me that run around and believe in God, that's somewhat antiquated to some folks. You get all the different views out there. But we've created this thing, and a lot of people are betting that this is what's going to tell us. I'm waiting for someone in this community to say, okay, AI, explain to me, write the papers on extraterrestrials, write the papers on UFOs. Tell me what's real, tell me what's not. I'd love someone to do that. There's probably someone out there that's working on a doctoral thesis that might hear this and do it. I'd love to hear that inspired answer.
I have to tell you something that you all may not be aware of, and that AI has been, after it has gotten all the documents and books that it can possibly swallow, it's starting to scrape without permission YouTube videos, podcasts, things like that, to get more and more information, because it always has to get more and more and more, which is really bizarre if you think about it, that it's going so deeply. And I'm just talking about things like ChatGPT and the Google engine, whatever it is they're building. And the reason, like, Google is not doing anything about YouTube being scraped is because they're actually on it themselves. I was listening to a report on this from a place that I trust, and boy, it's really amazing. But you also got to realize that AI can hallucinate, and that can cause some major problems. I know, Chris, I see you rolling your eyes, and it really.
No, I'm not rolling my eyes.
I
not that I don't believe it. I'm scared.
There was a situation where this guy was testing an early version, and it basically was telling him to kill his wife, that they would be better off as a friend, with the AI. They put the brakes on that whole thing and changed a lot of things so that wouldn't happen.
Well, yeah, I'm sure they completely changed it. I'm completely confident that no one would. That's not still running around loose.
No,
a lot of it depends on who programs these programs. Okay, I'm sure you guys saw several months back that AI was an AI engine of some type was asked about the founding fathers of this republic of the United States, and they asked for pictorial, pictures, something. And this AI had been programmed by somebody that was a strong proponent of DEI. Okay. And they got pictures of the founding fathers that included, among a few white guys, some black guys, some black women, some other women, okay, as the founders of the republic. That's the danger, okay? Changing, rewriting history, depending upon the political bent of the people that are utilizing and creating these programs.
No doubt. I just have to take a quick aside. Someone called me sunglasses dude hit the nail on the head. Joseph, I don't know who you are. You contact me at Command Cobra, KGRAdb at gmail.com. I'm sending you something, a t-shirt, something. I just think that's what I live for. one guy who calls me sunglasses dude. For somebody who couldn't get into the audio visual club when I was in high school, okay, to be sunglasses dude. I'm bringing that to the 50th high school reunion in a few years.
There you go.
When my 50th comes up.
Take a screenshot.
Sunglasses dude. Joseph?
Yeah. No, here's something I'd like to put in there about AI to get, back on track is, and I've said this on my show, and I want to hear what you guys have to say about it. I think from this point on, we cannot trust any contemporary images or videos when it comes to the UFO world. I think it's just too difficult.
Absolutely correct.
So, did we bring that up last week?
Are you gonna tell Jeremy Corbell then?
Yeah,
I'm curious. I'm asking for
a friend.
I'm asking for a friend or an alien, an ET. I'm asking for an ET. Are you really going to tell that to him?
I have a clip. I just got to tell you guys something pretty funny now. Bring it up, Jeremy Corbell. No offense, Jeremy. I know you just love me because I questioned you about Bob Lazar. But anyway, my producer Donna and better half and I are standing in line at the Washington D.C. hearing last July 26th, and we're there, since 5:40 in the a.m. and waiting in line. And all of a sudden, there's this big ruckus, and I can try to pull up the clip if I can find it. And so I got my camera ready. What the heck's going on? And there's a light crew and camera crew. And there comes Jeremy and George Knapp walking side by side with a whole entourage behind them. And everyone's going, yeah. It was hilarious. I'm sorry. I just thought it was pretty funny. If I can find the clip, I'm going to.
Was there smoke in the background? Was there like that dry?
Yeah. And here it is. They show up just before the doors open. And then they're Buddha bookends, with Grush. There's right up front, and all the seats are like taped off beside them and stuff. So well, on one side of them that is, but they got the very front seats when we were standing there all day.
Nobody invited me, by God.
Yeah. But 1,000 people are waiting in line.
Martin, I'd like to go back to your question about AI. I think AI is going to enhance and embolden the people who are phonies in the ufology field, because now they'll have a tool to make their stories even more believable by creating images, and we won't be able to, verify those images. Because let's face it, in the ufology field, I don't think anybody will dispute this. We got some people who are coming up with some real cockamamie stories that are just not believable. I mean,
it's already happening. It's already happening. There's some UFO sites on Facebook that I see, phony images up. And these are sites that people that admin them should know better than that. Here's proof, and there's something in Vietnam, and, all this stuff that, if you pay attention to that type of thing on Facebook, you're going to see a lot of fake pictures up there now. I've seen them already.
Crowbar, I think you got something to say, don't you?
No. I just finished an interesting book, and in the book, the author is trying to explain. He has a very interesting approach where he is talking about basic codes, basic coding of the world, that this dystopian world that he portrays in the book, that if you can stay to the codes, stay to the basics of truth, you're able to discern what's going on, because all the things that we're talking about here happen. So when I look at someone like Dr. Maccabee, I think that there is some value. I think there's a lot of value. That didn't mean to throw that, to devalue that. There is immense value in things that he presented, things that he verified, things that he talked about. But like everything about our history in this country of the United States and in the world, I am now at that point in my life where I look at stuff through the accuracy of saying, yep, there is flaws with this person. I see these flaws. I see what they did correctly. And it's easy for me because being some quote unquote a Bible thumper, there's plenty of people in the Bible that do great stuff, but they've got some pretty horrendous records that are put down in the Bible to get to the point of where they're at. So when we talk about these things that are coming up, I think the most important thing that we serve a large community of folks that tune in is, aside from Don's incredible history, Martin's incredible amount of time spending, really engaging with a number of people that are sadly departing and those that are still with us. Chris, all the work that you've done in the past with MUFON is that you arm them with the criticality to look at stuff and say, okay, why is this true? Why is this accurate? Why? What is the source? Don't accept or don't just throw away something that's presented until you've really analyzed it. And we used to call that critical thinking. That was kind of going out of style when I was in college in the 80s. We were really starting to slip that scale quite a bit. And that's what we really require in this. Because when Don talks about things that are going on in near space around our planet, I have a hard time accepting this intergalactic battle that's going on. But then I look around and I go, it's not hard for me to think that some of my self-appointed betters in government, in world leadership roles, would sign a deal that says, yeah, if you have to take half the population, you have to take half the population. I'm covered. People I care about are covered. And do what you have to do. And we're going to go with that. I can come up with that conclusion. I've seen that enough ugliness on that to know that is not an indistinct possibility. The number one thing is to critically analyze what you're seeing, to come up with it. And when you find something that's a really, really good fake, I think it needs to be pointed out and say, here's the applause. Incredible effing flake. I mean, fake. Unbelievable. This is just great stuff. But I look back at old pictures from the 30s and 40s, stuff that was recorded in the 1800s, stuff that's recorded in biblical record that isn't easily explained or dismissed away, that kind of backs our position on what we're talking about. No doubt. We're always going to disagree on one-to-one cases. I think we're always going to join on the pursuit of the truth, and the truth is out there, right? The X-Files. I think that is, I want to believe, and the truth is out there. The two great tenets of that fine show. It could be the rye talking. Martin, I'm going to pull back into it now.
Well, I have a question for Chris. Chris, you had 2 videos of Bruce, and what was the second one?
Oh, let's show it.
All right, here.
It goes back to what I was saying about him playing both sides of the fence here.
We have stories of people whose cars were stopped by objects flying over, and then afterwards everything worked fine. If you could imagine that the witnesses themselves went crazy during that period of time and completely confabulated whatever their story is, and then reverted to normalcy, then maybe you can then explain things like some amazing sightings. Although it gets tougher when you have multiple witnesses, because then you have to assume that all the witnesses went crazy at the same time and saw the same thing while they were crazy. Came up with the same story. Well, the bottom line is I don't believe the claim of the Air Force that all sightings can be explained.
It comes back to a very simple tenet with me. And I guess this comes from when I was a cop. If somebody lied to me, bold-faced, right off the cuff, lied, and I discovered that it was a lie, well, I got to tell you, I'll never trust that guy again, ever. And anything else he tells me, I'm going to examine it 7 ways from Sunday. Okay. Now, with Maccabee lied to me on several occasions. And I took it in my wife coined this term for me, or at least that's where I learned it, a convenience liar. Now, I did stuff in the military that was of a top secret nature. And if you were to ask me, Don, what did you do when you were over there?
You still
Some
can't
things
tell.
I could say, well, I did this or I did that. Then other things, if I can't tell you, I'm going to say, well, I can't talk about that. Okay. That's something I can't talk about. I swore an oath, blah, blah, blah. Okay. And it's something that even today, all these years later, I can't talk about. Nobody's told me I can talk about it. Okay, that's fine. But for somebody to ask somebody a question, like I did with Bruce on a number of occasions, and he kind of sloughed it off or said, "Oh no, I don't remember that," or whatever. Look, I've been around this block a few times, and I knew damned well he was not telling me the truth. So from that point forward, everything that I heard him say from that standpoint went under my microscope. Okay. Now I don't know about you guys, how you guys feel about that. I think Chris probably has pretty much the same attitude. If you had a CI and you found out that the CI was intentionally lying to you, I put that boy down hard. Okay. But I don't know.
I don't think it's. I don't think
agree
it's,
with you, Don.
I don't think there's a negativity to having a healthy skepticism to anybody coming in. Countless conferences, gatherings that I've been at, people have come to me and they've explained stuff to me that they've experienced. It's not that I can't. I believe they believe what they are telling me to a great extent and what they've experienced, but I don't have anything to verify that. And then you go deeper into trying to ascertain this. I don't think that there's anything. I think it's healthy, especially when you're in a quote unquote an investigator or someone who wants to purport to present information like this on something that is so volatile as this subject is, the things that we talk about, that you just do not do the due diligence. I guess that's the kind of the hot current term, to verify or at least point out, look, these are all the things that make sense to what this person is presenting. This is the stuff I can't verify, and this is what my gut is telling me is accurate, true, and this is the stuff that I have an uncomfortable feeling with. Bad people will tell you good things. Bad people will tell you valuable things. My 2 co-hosts that are former law enforcement know that to be true. You would press bad people to get information out, to do the right thing, to get things solved. There's no doubt about that. But I think when you approach it, knowing the source, you have to be extra.
I think
critical.
in
we're
this
in a world
field,
now
the
where everything
ufology
has to be
field,
somewhat extra critical.
I think in this field, in this ufology field, I think people are, and I just want to put this out there, my personal humble opinion, there's people who want to get rich, and they think they can get rich in the ufology field. I haven't seen anybody get rich in this field. But
It's
I
like
mean, there are,
aviation, Chris. If you want to make a little money in ufology, you start out with a really big pile.
That's right.
That's right. That's right. And I think that's part of it. And you see these stories change, exaggerated, or even boldly lying. I mean, I've interviewed people, and I knew they were lying. I've told them I think they're lying, and you know that's the problem. There's no how is the best way to say this? There's no internal affairs to look at these cases and look at the stuff that's being presented and to take away the garbage and put the real stuff there that people could actually focus on and, scientifically look. Wow, I must have stunned all of you with that one.
No, not a bit.
Okay. Good stuff. Do
So
you agree, John?
let me give you the example that I use often in my other part of my life. You have someone who goes and does something heinous to the United States by releasing secret documents, or you have a foreign agent who releases documents as an agent working for the United States. There is, in our case of a U.S. person, there is an incredible amount of angst that goes on there. People that have been compromised, methods of gathering that have gone up there. But sometimes you have to deal with the information. I always go back to the age-old example that was used in Intel school. A burglar breaks into a building looking for ill-got gains. He comes across a series of files that depict the most heinous crimes. When caught, he provides those most heinous crime files that, although ill-gotten, not legally obtained, so you have to deal with the guy who broke into the building, but now you have this greater felonious activity that has to be handled. We deal with this all the time.
Sure.
And this particular part of our lives, looking at this, examining this kind of activity, we are fraught with examples that we know that the truth is probably much more accurately recorded, but not presented. You have little parts and pieces. And unfortunately, we have to look at almost everybody with this very harsh filter of, I believe you, but you have to prove it to me that I can actually take it further than what you're telling me.
Right. But here's the one thing that I, as a MUFON state director, one of the things that I see is I get these people coming in and they want to believe, hey, I'm a field investigator now. I want Chris, send me those cases. And the majority of the cases are just lights in the sky kind of a deal. And out of that bunch of cases are, it could be, satellites. It could be, the International Space Station. But then they keep saying, well, wait a minute, I'm getting all nothing but lights in the sky. But look at all these people here. They've had encounters. They've had, they taught an alien comedy. They done this with an alien. They've done that. I've tried all this stuff and none of it works. And I keep telling them, leave it alone. That's not what ufology is about. Don't go there, because it's a lot of it is just crap. And I'm sorry to say this, but there's a lot of ufology that is crap. The cases that we get tells the story of what's going on. You don't have aliens running around in the backyard all the time. You don't have aliens popping out and making you cookies. It's just not there.
Pancakes.
Well, yeah, pancakes. Definitely pancakes. I mean, let's be honest. Cookies, the whole raising, leavened bread, yeast, but pancakes.
Yeah.
And they look like UFOs. Let's be honest. If you really work them well, you can make them look like UFOs.
I just went on a Don Eckert rant for a second there. Oh,
yeah. Believe me, my friend, you can't carry the briefcase of the silverback.
But I didn't hear one son of a bitch.
I know I was about to call these people pork chops, but I really.
Oh, that's not nice.
Oh,
my little pig Zeppelin downstairs just cried out in his sleep when he heard you say pork chop.
Oh, that's one heck of a pig too.
Martin, what do you think of that? Seriously, I mean, because that's the one thing that really frustrates me about the garbage that's in ufology nowadays.
Yeah, and the infighting, and it is kind of frustrating. It's also frustrating when there was groups of people that, you got to think my way, or the highway, that type of thing. And I understand skepticism, but I think there's also a lot of people throwing the baby out with the bathwater type of thing. I've been listening to a number of different people, and there's a lot of people out there right now saying that the whole, Grush, Elizondo, Mellon, on and on. Anyone you could think of, they're all just hucksters and things like that. And I keep hearing this out there, and I don't even like to go on X, Twitter, formerly whatever it is, but just because there's so many people bashing each other, so there is a lot of infighting right now. I see a lot of it, and
do what I do, Martin, and
ignore
all of it.
Yeah.
Do you see a lot of phony stuff, Don?
Oh, you're always going to see things that you suspect are phony, but I kind of, when I'm not here or doing DMR, I kind of keep my nose down to the grindstone. I don't go out and do an extensive amount of social media. It's a waste of time. And because Race Hobbs back in the day started calling me the Silverback, I think a lot of people are intimidated. They don't come to me. So there you go.
Well, we saw pictures of you, so don't sell yourself short, there, big guy. I mean, there's a certain je ne sais quoi there that's presented in those photos. That
was that French?
I love when he talks French. Yeah.
Oh God, I love that.
It makes him crazy because he's from Vietnam era, which is a nice segue. Joseph asked backgrounds. So Joseph, I don't know about how to properly phrase this. Don has a very particular background in the type of work he did in Vietnam and the area of the Army he was in. That is extremely sensitive Army intel background, based around signals, based around other intelligence activities. Chris is a former Marine, prior Marine, once a Marine, always a Marine, with extensive service. And Martin worked in people. He always discounts this, but he has shared with me some of his activities that he did early on in his life. The three of them have a very interesting law enforcement background as well, and doing stuff with the public at a level that I find very, very commendable. Myself, aviator, Peter Pan complex, really took the full fruits of being in the military and enjoyed a really good time. Flying still is a very big part of my life. Yeah, I have a couple of special operations units. I've worked with a number of the very esteemed teams that are out there. This past week, I was sharing.
You even made a movie.
Yes, I was in a movie. We don't need to talk about that now.
What was the name of the movie, Commander?
Well, I was in Bad Boys 2 in the middle of the movie. A cinematic masterpiece. If you take the F word out of it, it goes from about a 2-hour movie to about a 45-minute to a 90, to like a 59-minute movie.
That's like Scarface.
Scarface, yes. Say hello to my little friend. So we have a very interesting background, but there's a very shared common core here with all of us. Obviously, we have very diverse tastes in a lot of things, but there's a very common core, and this is the uniqueness, and I'm going to trace this back to Bill Skywatcher. Skywatcher really tried hard to pull us together to do this, and it's somewhat of a diverse group, but it's also a very bonded group. We keep in touch during the week. I wish we could get a weekly meeting together before we do a show. That's kind of hit or miss, but we do work really hard to come together on this. I would say this, and I think you will watch the reaction when I say this on my other three hosts. We have each other's back when it comes to these kinds of subjects. That if someone said, well, Martin said this, I'm going to take Martin's side until I talk to Martin or Don or Chris to know what their stance is, because that's the kind of bond that we've developed over many years before this show got together. KGRA being a big part of it. So that's kind of the military backgrounds. There's also a large dedication of time in the social world of doing things right. But there's an ethical code with my co-hosts that's very bonding that I have with them. Very diverse in our approaches on stuff. And I look forward to meeting everybody in person one of these days, because I feel like I know you guys very, very well. But we've had fun. Now, like at Christmas time, I can send Don and Chris a really nice Omaha meat kind of thing.
Boy, you did too.
But Martin, that would not work really well with Martin. But I think Martin would say that the vegetarian, unbelievable nut and dried fruit thing I sent was like a perfect friggin' hit. Always send me alcohol. And anybody in the audience, if you want,
please send them alcohol.
Perfect gift. It's Guns, Lawyers, and Money from Warren Zevon. That song came up for my other job this week. We think that's an alcohol. That's the only thing that Zevon didn't put.
Beaujolais.
I do have to correct one thing on that whole. That's very nice, Commander. Thank you for that. But Don didn't know who the hell I was, even though I had him on my show before. He says, "Who is this Willis guy? I don't know who the hell he is." I do remember that, right, Don? But we seem to. We may have our differences, but we can actually talk.
Well, Martin, as Don often says, it's effing Crossfire. Your hair's going to get mussed up.
Yeah, I think that's the purpose of this. Some people I've talked to some people, and they say they hate this show. Just to let you know, because you're always going to get that.
But they still tune in.
Some people like it.
Tune in with your hate. I love it when you tune in.
Well, let me tell you a little secret.
Uh-oh. You got 3 minutes, Don. 3 minutes.
Yeah, that falls under the heading.
Wait a minute, Don. Hold on. Okay, go ahead.
That falls under the heading of tough shit. They don't like it? Tough shit.
Oh, someone says play a clip with Commander. What's that?
Oh, yeah. If you go to YouTube and look up Commander Cobra.
Oh, wait. Bill just loaded it. Bill loaded it. Here we go.
We got to go fast, fling at a high rate of speed down Miami Harbor. Stop that boat! Guys, moving in. I think we're going for the bridge.
I would just make a quick note.
Was that really you?
That's really me. In the second helicopter, Jim Gavin is the guy that's in the civilian helicopter. Alan Perwin is the helicopter that's filming all this. You don't get to see him.
Now, wait a minute. Did you actually fly under the bridge?
Oh, under like 4 takes to 10 takes under the bridge.
Oh my God!
I can't remember how many shots we did off the skyscraper for that scene. And the guy that was wearing the little belt that was on this plywood platform on this skyscraper building that we did it. Incredible work. A lot of fun. We were there for a week to get the 3 to 5 minutes worth of footage you just saw.
Oh, very costly footage.
So why didn't somebody just shoot that boat up with a
16? Oh, he does.
16?
If it went longer, you would see us, the boat get shot up.
We're out of time, aren't we, guys?
Yeah, we are.
No.
Oh,
No?
yeah. Yes, we are.
No,
Yes.
we're not. Bill said we can run to the 59-minute mark. God damn it!
Oh my gosh, good. So I want to know more about this, Commander. Tell us what the hell that was like.
All right. So first of all, Michael Bay, director. I go down for a planning meeting for all the scenes. Michael Bay is a huge supporter of the U.S. military, obviously with Transformer movies and all the stuff he does. I find the guy completely accessible. I really enjoyed it. Walked in, we're sitting there. He has those giant bull mastiffs. You'll see them in the movie. They're maneuvering around in this room. We're having this meeting. He's at the head of the table. I'm sitting at the head of the table. He looks at me, and I happen to make a face and a remark that it's not accurate. And I explained to him that if you want accuracy, here's the things we have to change. And at one point he says, I keep calling him Mr. Bay. He goes, no, please call me Michael. And I happen to say to him, well, Michael, call me my call sign, which is something like Cobra. And that's how it starts. And everyone that's sitting on the sides of the table can't believe we're having this kind of connection on that. And he takes a board. He brings the guy in who does incredibly talented. I wish I could get up quickly and show you guys. I have the sketches. They take out the storyboard. They change the scenes around. And he changed those scenes to be much more accurate because I am a complete loser when it comes to watching military movies. When you see stuff where the wings are wrong, the haircuts are wrong, the ribbons are in the wrong spot. Marines.
Well, unfortunately, we're out of time now, guys.
Okay, well, there you go.
That's awesome. Glad we ended
So,
that way. That was good.
We'll see you next week, gang. Have a great week. And from all of us, keep looking up.